What's good with y'all boys, man? Welcome back to Rain Kyle Everything Sports Podcast. We got a full college football game day breakdown for y'all. We got bets, we got underdogs, we got favorites, we got pretty much the matchups and everything y'all can look for. So I appreciate y'all coming here and watching this video. So what are we gonna start with, Ray?
What's going on, Kyle? What's going on, guys? Today we're going to start off after a pretty boring slate of weeks that turned into an interesting couple of games. We're going to start off with our top 25 today. So we're going to start off at 25. We got Auburn. Started the season 3-0. Had pretty convincing wins in weeks 1 and weeks 3 versus UMass and Samford. And then a pretty interesting game at Cal. Ended up 14-10, a low-scoring game. The team looks good so far. They haven't had a real test except for that decent Cal team. That Thorne quarterback's got to stay consistent for them. They have a decent matchup, and they're going to be the best team they've played so far coming up with Texas A&M this week. At 24, I have Colorado, a decent bump down, and some people have them a lot higher. They just didn't have a lot of competition recently. They had that Nebraska team in the middle that's pretty good, but that TCU team I believe is really overrated. That let them score, and they let them score 42 points. And they had that Colorado State team last week. They never should have let come within 20 of them, and they ended up taking them to double overtime. So I believe this team has a ceiling, and I believe they're getting there. I believe this team has they thrive off the energy, and I feel like once they get this first loss coming up soon against these really powerful teams they have coming up with Oregon and USC, I believe that hype is going to die down. They're not going to have that much fuel to go into the next couple of weeks. So I don't believe this team is as good as they're playing like they are, and I think that's why they're at 24. At 23, I have Florida. Started the season 2-1. Started with that week 1 loss to Utah, a really good Utah team, and they only lost by 2 touchdowns. And then they beat McNeese State in week 2, blew them out. And I believe that's a big factor with good teams is do you blow out the people you should? And they had a good convincing win last week, 29-16 against Tennessee. We won't get to see much from them this week playing Charleston Southern, but I really believe in that Florida team. I don't believe that one loss should, especially against such a good team, should push them down too far. Next up, in 22, we have Washington State. I really believe a lot in this Washington State team, and I'm really looking forward to their matchup this week with Oregon State, and then coming up the next week with UCLA. The reason I'm really high on this Washington State team is their first week was against Colorado State, where they put up 50. Compared to Colorado, against their performance last week, is really impressive because they put up 50 in regulation, and it took Colorado 2 overtimes just to put up 43. And everybody knows how powerful that Colorado offense is. They also held Colorado State to 24 points, and we see that they're able to put up points too on that Colorado defense. Then they had a good convincing win in week 2 versus Wisconsin, who was ranked 19 at the time. Beat them 31-22, and they had a blowout last week against Northern Colorado, putting up 64 points. Like I said, they must continue to score to keep this high, but I do believe that they're going to have a great matchup this week, and sneak peek, I got them beating Oregon State this week. Then they have a UCLA game coming up after that. So, in number 21, I have Miami starting out 3-0. They haven't played a whole lot of competition. They had a good game against Texas A&M in week 2. They played Miami of Ohio and Bethune-Cookman in weeks 1 and 3. Blew both of them out, only allowing 10 points in that game total, in those 2 games total. But a good week in week 2 against Texas A&M. Still allowed 33 points, but put up 48 points. And against a good SEC team, it's tough to do. We won't get to see a lot from them coming up anytime soon. They have Temple this week. But I think they have a lot of power on their offense, and I hope their defense will hold up. At 20, I have Ole Miss. I do believe this Ole Miss team is pretty good. They haven't played a lot of power. They played a good Tulane team in week 2, who was ranked at the time. Put up 37 points on them, which is a tough task to do on that Tulane defense. And they also have a high-scoring offense, putting up 73, 37, and 48 points in their first 3 games. They have a lot to prove this game. Coming up against the Bama team, who also has a lot to prove. Bama's been down in the dumps recently. I think if they get after Milroe, though, they'll have no trouble handling Alabama.
Quick note too, very quick. When they played Tulane, Michael Pratt was out their star quarterback, so it's still an impressive win. So I do agree with that, but I feel like if Michael Pratt was playing, could have been a little different there. But go ahead.
At 19, I have UCLA. Had a really good start so far. They haven't played anybody. They played Coastal Carolina, San Diego State, and NC Central. So, convincing wins. And like I said, I believe that's the good teams are supposed to blow out the teams they're supposed to. So they've been blowing them out, but I don't know if that's going to hold up. But we're going to be able to see this week when they play number 11 Utah. At 18, I have Alabama, a lot lower than a lot of people have them, but I think it's a pretty good spot, especially with their start 2-1. They blew out Middle Tennessee State first week, like everybody expected they would, and then had a good battle with Texas at home, losing to Texas 24-34. I believe they showed a lot that time. I don't really know if that loss was more about how good Texas is or how bad Alabama is, especially with the next week going to South Florida and making that a game and only winning by 2 touchdowns. I think a lot of their problems do stem from quarterback. I think they have a lot of really good players, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think their best players are running back, but I think if they can figure out their quarterback situation, they'll be fine. But I think they have big problems there, and I think it's going to show this week. At 17, I have UNC, North Carolina. They had really good wins against South Carolina in the beginning, 31-17. And I'm pretty high on that South Carolina team with Spencer Rattler only putting up 17 points on them. But then they had a struggle with App State week 2 going into double overtime, but putting up 40 points nonetheless, and then blowing out Minnesota. So this North Carolina team is going to be tough to gauge them throughout the year. They only play 2 ranked teams, which is Miami and Duke, who I don't believe will ever see the top 15 this year. Or as far as the Miami and Duke team go, the North Carolina team could jump up into the top 15 just because they don't play them until really late. But if they handle those 2 teams, they'll probably go undefeated in the regular season. At 16, I have Missouri. They haven't played anybody, but they did play Kansas State last week, who was okay. I don't believe that Kansas State's as good as people think they are. So I don't really rank that win too high for me, but they did beat them with that 61-yard walk-off field goal. They have Memphis this week, and which they get a test coming up in a few weeks with LSU. So we'll see how good they are facing that high LSU team. At 15, I have Duke. I think this is a ceiling for Duke because I don't really believe this Duke team is that good. They had a good win versus Clemson, who I believe is terrible, 28-7 in the first week, and they didn't play anybody after that, just blew out two teams. But they have UConn this week, so we won't get to see much from them. It should be another blowout. Then they have Notre Dame, and I don't believe that game's going to be close. I have Notre Dame winning that big, and I believe this is about Duke's ceiling for this season. Next up, I have Oregon State. This Oregon State offense looks really good. Their defense is solid. They haven't played a whole lot of competition, but they do have 2 really tough games coming up these next 2 weeks with Washington State and then Utah. So we get to gauge a lot from them this time in these next 2 weeks. At 13, I have Oklahoma. Also haven't played a whole lot, but they're just blowing out teams. 73 points the first week and 66 points in the third week, and only allowing 28 points in 3 games. I really think this Oklahoma offense is really good, and I believe they're going to continue to roll through the year. They have Cincinnati this week, so I won't get to gauge too much for them. But at 12, I have Oregon. Also hasn't played anybody. Had a decent game versus Texas Tech in week 2. But they do have Colorado this week, so that Colorado defense, I'm not too high on them, so I believe Oregon will be able to score a lot. But we'll see how well Oregon's defense can hold up against that high-powered Colorado offense. At 11, I have LSU just outside of my top 10. Started the season 2-1. Lost to a really, really good Florida State team week 1, but still put up 24 points in that game. And then went on to blow out Grambling State 72-10 and Mississippi State 41-14 in the next 2 weeks. They have Arkansas coming up at the start of their SEC schedule, and that SEC schedule is tough. So we'll get to see a lot from them coming up soon. But I'm really high on this LSU team. I think they'll go up in the rankings in the weeks coming. At 10, I have Utah. Had that really, really convincing win in week 1 versus Florida. That really set them up to be as high as they are right now. 24-11 there, and then went out and beat a Baylor team who I think is terrible. I do not believe in this Baylor team at all. Only beat them by 7 points, but I believe they'll bounce back this week against UCLA. They have a really solid defense, only allowing that Florida team to score 11 points. So we'll see how they hold up against UCLA this week. At number 9, I have Washington. They started 3-0. They haven't played a whole lot. They played a Michigan State team who's okay, but they did blow them out 41-17. So they have a decent Cal team coming up this week. I think they'll handle them pretty easily. and continue to stay up in the top 10 going into week 5. At 8, I have Penn State. I believe this Penn State team is really good. Their offense is really good. Their defense is solid. They have a big test this week coming up with Iowa. But this Penn State team hasn't played a whole lot of competition. They've played a lot of mediocre teams, Power 5 teams with West Virginia and Illinois. But they're handling teams like they should, and we'll see how they hold against Iowa this week. At number 7, I have Texas. It's hard to judge this Texas team because their only real game they've played this year is Bama. And after seeing that Bama team last week, I think it's really brought Texas's 3-0 record down a lot in credibility, just because we don't really know how good that Bama team is, especially if they're showing last week. We won't get to see a lot from them this week. They're playing that Baylor team, which I do not believe in at all. So we'll get to see them coming up pretty soon. But for now, I have Texas this high, but I don't think you can really put them any lower. I just need to see more out of them to push them any higher. At 6, I have Ohio State. With Ohio State being this high, it's just because of all their high power on offense, and their defense is super solid, only allowing 20 points in 3 games. They have a really big game with Notre Dame coming up this week. I believe this Notre Dame team is really good. We're in our top 5, and I haven't even mentioned them yet. So I believe it's going to be a great game. We're really going to be able to see a lot from Ohio State this week. At 5, I have Michigan. It's a lot lower than most people. They just haven't played any competition for me. They're not scoring a whole lot of points. They're not beating teams by 70. They scored 30, 35, and 31 against East Carolina, North Las Vegas, and Bowling Green. They don't play a ranked team until 3 weeks left in the season. They have Penn State with 3 weeks left in the season. Then they play Maryland, and they play Ohio State. So we won't really even get to see them until then. So I expect them to stay right around the top 5 until then, unless they drop a game against a team that they shouldn't. They have Rutgers this week, so we won't get to see much from them this week. But I'll be looking forward to seeing them in those last couple of weeks to see what they can do against those powerful offenses. At 4, I have Florida State. I think this Florida State team is really good. I'm really high on Jordan Travis. He's a really consistent quarterback. I don't think you're going to see a lot of flash from him, but he's going to do what he needs to get done. He doesn't turn the ball over. He's going to give you 300 yards a game. They had that really convincing win versus LSU, who I think is really good. It's a week 1 win, so it's kind of tough to gauge how much it is, but they play Clemson this week, and I don't believe that Clemson team is very good at all, and so I believe it's going to be a blowout in that game, and they're going to vault even higher. At 3, I have USC. I think Caleb Williams is the real deal. He has the highest ceiling of any quarterback right now. He's playing the best of any quarterback right now. They haven't played anybody, but, I mean, they're just blowing. These scores from these first 3 weeks are crazy. San Jose State 56-28, Nevada 66-14, and Stanford 56-10. I mean, they're just blowing teams out like they should be right now. And they don't really have a test this week with Arizona State, but then they do play Colorado next week. So we'll see how their defense really holds up against them. That's going to be the real test of how far they go this season. At number 2, I have Georgia. They don't have a test this week with UAB, and they haven't really played a whole lot of competition. They had a little bit of struggle last week, starting off slow against South Carolina, but they got the job done. Still an SEC opponent, still valid competition, holding Spencer Rattler to 14 points. I believe their quarterback is Carson Beck. I believe he's starting to settle in, and I believe they're going to really start to shine these next couple of weeks. I think they have UAB and then Auburn, so we'll get to see a test from them then. At number 1, I have Notre Dame. I don't see a lot of people put Notre Dame at number 1, but I'm really high on this Notre Dame team. I believe Sam Hartman is the most reliable quarterback in the league. 13 touchdowns or 12 touchdowns and only 0 interceptions through 4 games. He's 5th in the nation in passing yards. They have 1st in the nation running back. It's hard to pronounce his name, but he's leading the nation in rushing, and they don't have a receiver until number 58. They spread the ball around a lot. Their quarterback is 5th in the nation in passing yards, and their highest receiver is 58th. So, I mean, it just shows how much they pass the ball around. It's hard to contain this offense, who scored 42, 56, 45, and 41 points in their first 4 weeks and held teams well under that. I mean, they're blowing these teams out like they should be. So I really believe this Notre Dame team, especially with their offense, is going to be really good. We're going to see against a good Ohio State offense this week how well their defense can hold up, and that's going to be the real question. But I'm really high on this Notre Dame team, and I believe they're going to win this game this week. That's my top 25.
For me, I like Notre Dame at 1. I do. I think they have proven themselves this year. I mean, Stan Hartman coming in, 6-year redshirt senior, veteran. He's not going to turn the ball over. He's not going to lose the game for you. We'll look back later, going into our game previews. Georgia, number 2. I think they deserve to be there just based on what they've done, the past 2 years. But I do not think they'll make the college football playoffs. But just because Carson Beck, he's not Stetson Bennett. They don't have George Pickens. They do have the best tight end in the nation. They do have probably the best defense in the nation, top 3 minimum. But, I mean, they don't have the firepower to keep up with a USC, a Notre Dame, a FSU. And honestly, I don't think they can keep Texas either. I like Texas a lot. I think Texas could jump Ohio State and Michigan for me, and I put them at the 5 spot. But, that's all, just nitpicking.
So, you don't think that the Georgia team is going to make the playoffs? Who do you think is going to make it out of the SEC?
It's tough, but I do think LSU can sneak in there.
You think so? Do you think Georgia will make the SEC championship game, or you think?
Yes, I do. They're gonna. I mean, it's tough because I know Georgia's not played anybody, so they could just be playing to the level of their competition. But I can see them losing to Auburn. I can see them losing to a few SEC teams, and I do believe that LSU will beat Auburn. I do believe that they'll beat Alabama when they play also. So I think they'll kind of make up for the loss at FSU. And I feel like, I think FSU's going to win out. So I feel like that loss won't look as bad.
Yeah, I also agree. I think LSU is going to win out in the SEC, and I think they're going to make the championship game. But I don't think anybody can really test Georgia on the other side. So I think Georgia will make it there pretty easily. And I believe Carson Beck's starting to lock in. I think he's really going to start settling in this as being the guy. And I think he's going to really bring them. And I think I have them going to the playoffs. I think they're going to end up beating LSU in that championship game. But we still have a lot of season left to see from them.
Yeah, I mean, if he is just a game manager, they'll make the playoffs. But we'll see. Because they have the defense to do it, no question.